Beautiful discovery by Elon Musk and DOGE and the broader Trump administration that is poking around the federal government and figuring out where are we spending all this money. Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary today, with the bombshell revelation that the U.S. government is funding the establishment news media outlets, the supposedly independent press that's speaking truth to power. They're actually funding them with your taxpayer dollars, which then builds them up and further entrenches them as the papers of record, thereby further justifying taxpayer money, creating this feedback loop.
So upon coming out here to the briefing room, I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room. And I can confirm that the more than $8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The DOGE team is working on canceling those payments now. Again, this is a whole of government effort to ensure that we are going line by line when it comes to the federal government's books. And this president and his team are making decisions across the board on, do these receipts serve the interests of the American people? Is this a good use of the American taxpayers' money? If it is not, that funding will no longer be sent abroad, and American taxpayers will see significant savings because of that effort.
We on the right often refer to the leftist establishment news outlets as state media. We compare them to Pravda in the Soviet Union or state TV in North Korea or something. However, what we are finding out now is they're literally state media. We have actual state media in America, like NPR, National Public Radio, is publicly funded. That's the government funding a news outlet. The news outlet pushes the priorities of the libs, the elite liberals who generally control our government. So you already see that feedback loop. But here we're also talking about ostensibly private news outlets, places like Politico and perhaps others. Now, the argument for the government paying these news outlets is that they're the papers of record and they provide good information. Some of them do provide some interesting information amid all the left-wing opinion. Some of them have some worthwhile information. Okay, so the argument is these are the papers of record, and therefore the government should subscribe to them so that the government workers can have access to that information. But isn't this a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation here? How much of their establishment credibility, how much of their authority comes from the fact that they are backed up by the state? And so they become the paper of record because the government's spending a ton of money on them every year, subsidizing the subscriptions. Some people who are going to defend Politico in this case are going to say, look, Politico has a lot of different businesses. Some of it is left-wing opinion. Some of it is just nuts and bolts, beltway kind of reporting. And so subscriptions to Politico Pro are totally different from some stupid opinion column on the Politico.com website. Well, yes and no. Money's fungible. Perhaps it is the case that the money, your taxpayer dollars, they're coming from the government, are being used to just float the whole company. And then it's floating the whole company, and then the company can afford to spend money on its stupid opinion programming that is left-wing and that you probably don't agree with. Can you at least get a login, you the American taxpayer? Can you at least get a login to Politico? Now, I don't know that you would want one. It's not just Politico. I don't mean to just pick on Politico. I don't mean to just pick on the news outlets. To me, the clearest example of this from Elon poking around in USAID and all this federal funding is your taxpayer dollars get sucked up by the IRS. The IRS distributes it to the federal government. The federal government distributes it to USAID. USAID funds the Tides Center, a left-wing institution. The Tides Center then funds BLM. BLM then goes, burns down your city, maybe robs or kills you, certainly shakes down businesses and individuals all around the country, takes all of that kind of money and demands that the politicians advance more left-wing priorities. And then what happens? That same government that has now been pressured by BLM to push even further to the left, that same government takes more of your money and gives it to the Tide Center, which gives it to BLM, which riots, which forces the government to move even further to the left. And the whole thing is just artificial. The whole thing is astroturfed. It is so funny that Al Green, when he is promoting his impeachment efforts against Trump, 16 days in, wow. Frankly, I thought they would have done it sooner. It's so funny that he says, this has to be a grassroots movement. Man, we had a grassroots movement back in November. It was called The Election. And in that grassroots movement, most people voted for Trump. And nobody can accuse the Trump election of being some astroturfed feedback loop. For goodness sakes, the man had every institutional disadvantage. He had the government trying to imprison him. He had leftist activists and the government in some cases trying to kick him off of the ballot. He had the left-wing government justifying his assassination, which almost occurred twice, and he still won. And he won with huge swaths of every voting group. If there was ever a grassroots election in American politics, it was 2024 electing Donald Trump. And now we're beginning to see, okay, well, hold on here. How does the American left really operate? You know, Chuck Schumer says, okay, Trump got a few more votes than the other guy. Well, no, it's not really. It was a pretty clear victory. But furthermore, the whole left was so astroturfed. It's been propelled by this well-oiled patronage machine. This is why I think Elon and Trump are so justified in just killing USAID. It's not because in principle USAID can't be used for good things. It's not because America shouldn't promote influence around the world. It should. It's because, as Elon said, USAID, this patronage system for liberals within the government, it's not just an apple with a worm in it. It's all worms. It's just a big ball of worms, okay? And so you have to scrap that. And you have to create a new kind of system. It's not that we don't want there to be any influence. It's not that we don't want the government to incentivize any behaviors. We certainly do. It's that we need something new. We're about to embark on a major political and social experiment, which is, and so we can test my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that the American left is astroturfed, period. And we're about to test that because we're about to cut off the funding. So if the American left continues to thrive over the next few years, if the resistance really grows, okay, all right, I guess I was wrong. But if it doesn't, if you actually see the left continue to deflate, as it is deflated, I mean, this impeachment effort by Al Green, ranting and raving about dastardly deeds proposed to an empty room in Congress, I think is a great image of the present American left. If the left just continues to shrink and deflate, then we were right. This whole thing was a psyop. Okay, this whole thing was just a big charade, a big show, and it's a show that you paid for. You paid for those tickets, even if you didn't want to take your seat. Oh, hello. Funny how you and I keep meeting like this, huh? It's almost like, I don't know, maybe we could make it a regular thing, huh? You ring that bell, you subscribe. I'll see you every time I come around here. Then I'll see you. We'll get to do more of this. Be very nice. See you next time.